in the darkness. We will bring the torch of illumination. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Welcome to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and this is Who's Behind the Door? So your next guest, you might not know who it is, you might know exactly who it is, but it's all a mystery. The mystery of Revolution Radio for you. Who is behind the door?
It's Dallas Goldbug again, coming to you for the second week in a row. Last week was pretty interesting. I got a lot of good feedback from everyone. We're going to be taking a lot of calls this show because apparently there's been a lot of requests for people wanting to ask questions about what we were talking about and some other issues that have come up. So we will do that in a little bit. But first, just wanted to continue with what we were talking about when it comes to the media and the control that it has over society and how it is basically the leader of what we think and what we do and how we act. A lot of people base their lives on what they see on the news and are addicted to watching Fox News and CNN and whatnot. I was for a while. I was for a long time. I thought that the news was real and believed everything that they said, with understanding that there was a bias per, of course, network. But for the most part, I believed what the things that they were telling me were true. The events that they were reporting on actually happened. But recently, in the past few years, more like 6 years, I've come to the understanding that what they're talking about is completely scripted and made up. And the people that are involved in these stories that they report on typically are related to the owners of the network and the Big Six. Now, who are the Big Six? It's actually really the Big Five now, but they still call it the Big Six. They are the main owners of all the media that you basically see and hear and understand as to be your reality. They are basically Comcast, the Walt Disney Corporation, 21st Century Fox, Time Warner, and National Amusements. They own about 95% of everything that you see and hear and read about. This includes video games, books, newspapers, print, and of course TV and all the movies that you watch, the studios. So with this tremendous control, this tremendous power, you have to really understand their limits, their laws, their rules that they have to abide by, and take those into consideration when you're watching the news that you think is put there for your information, when it's really not. The shows and news and broadcasts that you see on your regular free broadcast TV, you think they're there to tell you information that you need that basically help you make decisions for yourself and your family. But really, they could care less what they're broadcasting. They really don't care because it's a business, and their business is to make a profit. So whatever they're showing you, it has to fall within their guidelines, their business rules, corporate rules, but it could be anything. Now, ask yourself this. Is it more expensive for them to actually go out and do real reporting and then have to run that by legal to make sure that they're not saying something that could get them in trouble or hurt an investigation, whatnot? Or would it be easier for them to just create and script out these events, and then they would own the rights to that video or that event, and they wouldn't have to worry about people suing them for privacy problems? So what do you think they would do as a corporation? What would they decide to do? And what we're seeing here in the media is this creation of this fake news that you hear about. And when I say fake, I mean fake. It's scripted, completely scripted out. So you have to understand it's in their benefit to use the laws, the free speech, the ability for them to do this to make a profit instead of risking that profit when it comes to reporting on real events. So understand that and really look at the news as something that possibly you hadn't looked at it before in this way. But I think once you do, your eyes will start to open up, and you'll start to see that what it is that you're actually watching. So Sumner Redstone is one of the owners of the Big Six. He owns National Amusements, and he's the one that coined the saying "content is king." He also coined the phrase "content may be king, but distribution is a close prince." So they're focusing on distribution of anything that's going to make them a profit. They don't care what it is, like I said. So the news falls underneath this category. Also, what falls under the category is the ability for the military and for law enforcement to take a stake in this type of media propaganda. They know that it's important for them to control or manage the perception of society. They have to do this in order to push for their wars and push for their political agenda, whatever that may be. So would it be advantageous for the law enforcement or for the military to be involved closely with the media conglomerates? Of course it would. Of course. Who else is higher than the military? No one. So they are basically in control of these mainstream media outlets. So if you think that you're going to see something or read something in their publications or on their networks that will basically tell you the inside information or tell you who's behind it all or the methods by which they propagate this information and why, then you're fooling yourself. You're absolutely fooling yourself because they're never going to tell on themselves. They don't have to. Now, the argument that I hear all the time is, isn't this fraud? Isn't this illegal? How can they do this to the public? Aren't there laws that stop them from using propaganda against the American people? Well, the same thing that protects you and I when we speak, or what I'm doing right now, telling you my opinion and things that I've uncovered in my investigations, I'm covered by my freedom of speech. So as a corporation, remember we talked about this last week, that corporation is considered a person. That person has the same rights that you and I have. Unfortunately, they don't have the morals that you and I have to abide by. They're allowed to do things that you and I would not do. And with that freedom that we have, so comes the people who use that for their benefit and abuse that, in my opinion. And that's what we see today happening. How long has it been happening? I couldn't tell you. But from what I've seen, I can trace it back as far as past the beginning of this country and pretty much to the time of the Romans, which we see their very big interest in, of course, theater. So these families that were in the royal level of society back in those days have, of course, their family tree and their lineage. From that time to today, that is a lot of people. That's a very large number of people. So people ask, why? How can they keep this a secret? Well, first of all, what is it that they're keeping a secret? It's business. They're just doing their business. Their family business is the media and promotions and marketing, etc. So they're not doing anything illegal because they're covered by, of course, the First Amendment. Fraudulent acts would be them selling you something that is not what they've claimed it to be. But nobody ever forced you to believe what you see on the screen. This is the problem. We've automatically assumed that what we see on that screen is the truth. We see a nice set designed, $100,000 set, $200,000 set with a guy in a nice suit sitting there with his commentary. And we look at that and go, oh, well, obviously this guy has some credibility because, of course, he's with one of these big networks. When the actual opposite is so much closer to the truth. So understanding that these corporations are in this game for profit. Understand that they have laws that they have to abide by, and those privacy laws. There are things that I was speaking about last week that you can use as your tools to ensure that what you're watching is, in fact, real or not. You have a set of guidelines that I've been talking about for the past 6 years, and some of them happen to be things like HIPAA laws, where a health care provider, a hospital or nurse or doctor, they have, of course, limits to what they can say about a patient or even admit to having a patient by name. So when you see a hospital liaison talking about a school shooting and they're talking about patients, you have to understand that that's not real. They wouldn't do that. They would lose their license. When you see the news media talking about minors being murdered or injured in one of these events, these school shootings or mall shootings, whatever, understand that that is not a real event because they cannot say things like that or they would be sued. And remember, every single one of these networks has a whole host of lawyers sitting there reviewing every single word that is going to be said on the teleprompter. Every single word. They stop things from being said that would cause them to possibly get sued because their objective is to never compromise their license to broadcast. That's the number one thing for them. So when it comes to a decision of whether to air a story or not, they will always say no if there is any chance of them getting sued. So when the news media run around and they have these camera crews with them and they're interviewing people out there on the streets, if you've ever been interviewed, and I have, you know that they make you sign a waiver, of course, giving them the right to use your image to broadcast. Now, why would they do this? You're out there in the public, aren't you? Isn't it free game to videotape anybody out there? Of course. Yeah, absolutely it is. But that is for your personal use. If I were to go outside with my video camera and you're standing out there and I videotape you, that's fine. I'm absolutely within my rights to do so unless I'm climbing a ladder or peeping in your windows or doing something like that, which is illegal. But if we're on the streets and I'm videotaping you, talking to you, whatnot, I'm allowed to use that footage. But a news agency is a business. They're not a person like me, and they have to abide by business rules. So because they advertise and they are in business for a profit, they have to get your permission in order for them to use your image and likeness. So understand that when you see these people randomly on the street, they're not randomly on the street just walking up to the reporter and talking to them about the political questions that you see them trying to make the people look dumb. You see them on the nightly shows. These things are set up. They're staged. Understand that the reality is much different than what you're being shown on TV. So when you get worked up because of you see these individuals that are from a certain political party and they're making comments that are just absurd, know that they're being broadcast to do that. They're being broadcast to stir you up, to get to your emotions. That's what they want, because when you act emotionally, allow your emotions to take control of you, that's when you will act out. And that acting out can be anything from telling your friends, bringing it up in conversations at work. That's what they want. That continues the longevity of that story. The more you talk about it, the more you tweet about it or blog about it, that's more for them when it comes to the story and the time frame that it can exist in the reality that it is. So, how do you combat this? Well, like I said, understand the rules, use those rules, and don't allow yourself to be caught up in the script that they have written, basically based on the emotional reaction that they're trying to get from you. Stay calm and just allow that script to take place and just know that these individuals are actors. And I've talked about this for the past 6 years on my website, WellAware1.com. I've been exposing these actors and their games that they've been playing. And when you look at the comments on the videos that I've done on YouTube, over 400 of them on the Dallas Goldbug channel, you will see a wide range of reactions that people have to the work that I've done. When you see the ones that personally go after me and attack me, these are individuals that have a stake in this game. Because if you and I, as adults, were to disagree on a topic, that would be fine. You would state your statement, I would state mine, and we would debate whether or not what I'm saying or what you're saying has validity. You wouldn't automatically just start jumping in and throwing insults at me about my family or about me or personal friends. That doesn't happen unless you feel threatened. So when people start to take it to that level, know that they have something in this game that they're feeling threatened by my work, and that automatically makes them take it to a next level and get very angry about it. I don't mind when people disagree with me. I hear it all the time, but you can definitely hear a difference between those that are authentic and genuine with their disagreeing and those that are in it for a different reason. So that's what I wanted to start off with tonight. So when we do take phone calls, we may run into some of those people that want to attack. It's just a matter of time before some of those people decide to, but typically they usually are pretty quiet when it comes down to it, but you never know. So I think we will start taking some phone calls if there's people lined up. I don't know if there are. I have to find out from my producer here. But until that happens, we can continue on with some of the news that we were talking about. Oh, trying to get something from my... Hang on. Hold on one second. Trying to get some information from my producer. And I think we're good. But not yet. Okay, fine. So I think... Okay, we're ready to take some phone calls. So if you want, you can call into the studio. I don't know the number, but can my producer? There you go.
East, west, north, south, and all other areas of the Rockies. Talk to the Dallas Goldbug. Dial 347-688-2902. 347-688-2902 or 415-691-6204. That's 415-691-6204. And, of course, you can always Skype in with Freedom Screen, and we will pull you into the call. If you do call in, we ask you to mute until your area code or name is called on. Thank you. Back to you, Ed.
All right. So until we get some people calling in here, some things that have happened in the media recently. We're hearing this talk now about Megyn Kelly. If you don't know who that is, that was a host of a show on the Fox News network. She has left Fox News, and of course there's been this big controversy about what's been going on. But if you're not familiar with what I've done in the past, I'd say 5 months, when I really started to uncover her involvement in all this, you could go to my website and you could type in Megyn Kelly in the search engine, and of course you can find out what I'm talking about. But we have identified her as being the person that was involved in a major story that was well known back in the day, and that's the OJ trial. Now, what I mean by this is, and let me first give you some of the details of the data that we've taken in. The work that I do, it basically uses multimodal forensic analysis. And what do I mean by that?
We're back with Mr. Zach Levine. How you guys doing? All right, let's roll. Zach, top 10 dunks.
Use biometrics daily to identify people. And one of those main biometrics is your fingerprints. The fingerprints that you have, of course, are unique to yourself. Even a twin, they do not have the same fingerprints. So you have many other features on your body that can be used that are unique to yourself. People assume that the face is something that's can be used, but honestly, that can only be used to a certain limit because your face is actually the most changing part of your body. So to use that as a base reference is very difficult sometimes, but of course, it can be done. So other parts of the body that are recognized by the courts and by government agencies as being unique to the individual are the ears. And one of the other ones is the dorsal, the back of the hand, the veins. The bifurcation points, and those are the joints where the veins separate and are joined together, are unique to yourself. They are set in place when you're born, and the only thing that they do when it comes to change is as you get older, when you're, of course, in your 50s and then past 50s, they will start to shrink in size, of course, for age. But the bifurcation points are there. They're set, and that pattern that you see on the back of your hand when the veins are visible is something that you can ID somebody with. So fortunately, the individuals that we are investigating are people that are involved in the media. So we have very good images to work with when it comes to the ears and the dorsal hand photographs and videos. With the now, of course, high definition broadcasts, this makes it even easier. So what we did was we took Megyn Kelly's hands, the back of her hands, and her ears, and we can grid that out and we can pattern the vein patterns and, of course, the inner ear patterns, and we can match them to Nicole Brown Simpson. Now, some of you won't believe this, but others, of course, have an open mind and can consider the data. But what you're told by, of course, Wikipedia and their other online bios is that she's a different age. Of course, they lie. This is easy. Nicole, well, let me start by Megyn admits that she has a brother and an older sister. We have some a break to go to, so we'll be back and talk about this in a few minutes.
Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
All right, we are back. So we were talking about the Megyn Kelly and OJ trial. So what I did about 6 months ago was when I did the analysis, I came across the hand vein pattern and compared them to Nicole Brown Simpson. And I got a positive match. From that point, I went and I did the ears. The ears were a positive match. So we find out that Nicole has a older sister and also has a brother. Now, what I've been uncovering with these staged events, and this happens pretty much every time, the people involved in the event, when you ID one of them, say, like we just did with Megyn Kelly, immediately look at the spouse or the siblings of that individual, and there is a very good chance, almost every situation we've had, where you will find that those individuals are playing supporting roles in that story that they are involved in. We see that with this situation with the OJ trial as well. We know her brother, and it's very difficult to find photographs of him, but I say that the photographs that I have found is you can compare him to Ron Goldman. Now, Ron Goldman and Kato Kaelin are the same person. You say, well, wait a second, hang on. They don't look alike. Well, they do look alike, except for there's one feature that's different, and that's his nose. So I claim that the photographs that you are being shown of that Ron Goldman, who was killed in the OJ trial, are photographs of her brother that was before a nose job. And, of course, after nose job, you have Kato Kaelin playing a role in this event as well. The more individuals that you have that can play multiple roles, and when I say play a multiple role, I mean all we're doing is we're seeing a photograph that we're being shown as Ron Goldman. He's not really playing any role. It's old footage. So it's really easy for them to play these dual parts. The less people that you have involved, the easier it is to control the story. And of course, since they're siblings, they're not going to tell on each other. They both stand to make a profit from this, and they have. They have gone on and made careers out of it. Of course, the other advantage that the networks have, they created court TV from that single event. The law enforcement, they get bonuses, they get their budgets increased when it comes to terrorist acts, and they claim they need more equipment. So, of course, the people will give them more money. Everybody makes out as a profit in this event, except for the taxpayers. The taxpayers like you and I. We're the ones that have to foot the bills for these events. There's various claims of how much it cost the city of Los Angeles for the court, for the trial. Whether or not those numbers are true, I don't know. But in any event, it still costs the taxpayers money. Plus, it also creates a false image, a false presence of the law enforcement out in that area. And of course, we had a lot of situations where people believed what we were told in the OJ trial, and that the police planted this information at the crime scene, and it caused a lot of unnecessary tension between the public and law enforcement. Now, this continues to happen on and on and on with other events, with school shootings and other events where you see the white cop beating the black suspect, things like that. So they benefit by creating tension and drama in society because that gets people to react. If they were to tell you the truth, that pretty much people are boring and none of this type of thing ever really happens, and if it did happen, you wouldn't hear about it because people have privacy laws that they have to follow. So you're not going to hear them talk about a murder that is under investigation because that could possibly poison a jury pool. That could possibly cause a mistrial. So information that you're being shown on the TV, if it's a ongoing investigation and they're talking about it, especially law enforcement, if they're talking about it, know that it's a fiction. They would not talk about something that hasn't gone to trial yet. And I can say this from firsthand experience. When I was arrested here on my property, the first thing my lawyer told me was, if the media come and talk to you, you point them in my direction and you say nothing to them. And the reason why the media would come to talk to me was because my case involved a situation where it was a gray area when it comes to the gun ownership and gun rights issue. And if you don't know the facts of it, we can get into it later, but I took it all the way to the Supreme Court and I won. And I am the reason why we have open carry in Texas, because of that one event that the law enforcement overstepped their boundaries and we had to set a precedent, and case law was set because of it. So there are multi-pronged advantages for the media and for the law enforcement to take part in these staged events. And of course, we see the actors getting their benefit, their bonus, whatnot, by, of course, getting their own TV show or getting to, well, Kato Kaelin got many TV shows or many type of walk-on acting gigs. But, of course, Megyn Kelly, she made out the most in this. Now, you say, well, wasn't OJ put in jail for this? Wasn't all his career destroyed? Well, OJ, his career was really sports. His career was over when it came to sports, and so therefore he's just now a pawn in the game. And of course he gets paid for doing these events. And you say, well, isn't he in jail? No, he's not in jail. The events that you see, they tell you these people were in jail. You can track down the fact that they're not by, if you look at the court documents that you can get by going to the courts. And I'm not saying by the court documents that you see online, because they can put whatever they want online. Don't believe what you see on a website. Just because it says it's from the courts might not be from the courts, or it could be a false document, a fake document. So what you have to rely on is the actual physical document that's going to be stamped by the court, by the county clerk, and it will be notarized. So you have to either order that from them or go down there and get it yourself. Now, they're not going to give you a fake document because that's illegal. They can't do that. So you're going to get the runaround. And if any of you out there have investigated some of these events, which I know some of you have, you hit that wall where they don't want to talk to you anymore, or they keep on pushing you aside until you basically get fed up. You can't get those documents. You can't get those public access to the things that they're talking about on the news because they just won't allow it to happen. So Megan, of course, Nicole Brown Simpson, we've got the biometrics. They are a match. We got her brother playing the roles in the event. Now, as per her older sister, there was a girlfriend of OJ that was involved in this event, and they had photographs of her. She has very similar features when it comes to the hand vein biometrics, but of course, they are unique to each other. So they will share some similarities when it comes to the genetics, but they were different. And that person, I believe, played the role of OJ's girlfriend. So you have the whole family involved in this. They're all working together for this one event, and they get handsomely paid for it. They get rewarded for it. Now, there's another aspect of this that when I mentioned before about the military or the law enforcement being involved in the networks, I do believe, and this is my personal opinion, that the majority of these people are either military, active, or are in some form of law enforcement where they are basically have a clearance, a security clearance. And that clearance basically makes them unable to speak about this and even mention it, period. So when I came out with this information about the OJ trial and Megyn Kelly, the following 2 days later after I released it, she disappeared for about a month. So people were wondering, where'd she go? What happened? I think that that's when they retrain her for basically handling any type of comments that would come to her about this information that I've released. Once she comes back, she was basically the same person. Everything was fine, but she said she just needed some time off. And at that point, it was pretty much you could see the downward traveling of her career unto the point where we have today where she's leaving Fox News. So we are in a situation where these individuals, once we out them, they react in a way that is pretty telling. And I get attacked all the time by these individuals and their friends and associates. And you can see their comments on my YouTube channel or my website. But it's pretty funny that not one of them has ever even taken the time to mount a good argument by using some facts and trying to establish that what I'm saying is